Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the council meeting tonight. Does that work?
Nope.
Okay. No. Now, can you hear me now? Now can you hear me? Okay. I didn't know I had now for on. Okay. Okay, welcome to the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. We have no 3-minute delegation or deputation tonight. I have approval agenda for the November 15th, 2021 meeting by Debbie and by Sherry. Before we go any further, Wendell Lawn, she can't make it tonight, so we're one counselor short. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, on the agenda, Eric, there was a letter that we all received from the Lion West Howell. I don't see it here. He had asked for it to be included. Can we include it on the agenda for communications?
You get that letter? Okay. Sure, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, that's fine. Is what I'm saying now? Oh, sorry, okay. Yep, we let that out. Okay, any conflicts with pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. I have approval of the minutes November 1st, 2021 Snow Mills regular council meeting. Moved by Sherry, second by Kevin. Any questions, comments? All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Delegation deputation. Delegation from Christine Zardo regarding the residential food waste diversion solution.
Hi, Christina, are you there?
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I've given you co-hosting ability so that you can screen share your PowerPoint if you need to.
Are you ready for the presentation now?
We are. Council has a large TV, so they'll be able to see you from the Zoom, but unfortunately you won't be able to see them. And you'll have to be nice and loud if possible. I've got my volume up as loud as it'll go.
All right, no problem. Are you able to confirm the presentation?
Nope, we can't.
Okay, let me try that one more time. My apologies. And it should be up now.
Yes, it is.
Great, and can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
Fantastic. So thank you, Reeve and Council, for having me this evening. My name is Christina Zardo. I'm here on behalf of Food Cycle Sciences Municipal Solutions team. I'd like to do a presentation of about 10 minutes this evening, with a few minutes at the end if there are any questions. So a little bit about us. Food Cycle Science is a Canadian company. We are 100% focused on providing food waste diversion solutions using our innovative technology called the Food Cycler. If it's an in-home food recycler, we sell direct to consumers through partners like Vitamix and Rebel, but we sell to municipalities as a solution through Food Cycler Municipal. And we help mainly small, rural, remote, and northern communities keep food waste out of their landfills. As of today, we have our solution is a trusted solution for 19 municipalities across Canada, with municipalities in BC, Alberta, Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Quebec, and several in Ontario, including Bancroft, Trent Lakes, and Algonquin Highlands. So the problem with food waste is that it is avoidable. It accounts for a large portion of our household waste, often a majority, and made up of mostly liquid, which is heavy and freezes in the winter. On top of that, food waste in landfills is responsible for generating harmful greenhouse gases. So all of these factors make it so that food waste is a problem that has a strong municipal impact. And one of those impacts to municipalities is that because it makes up so much of what's in our garbage, it causes our landfills to fill up quickly. Operating a landfill is costly for a municipality, so we want to extend the lifespan for as long as possible. The environmental impact of food waste is that when organic waste decomposes in landfills, the anaerobic environment causes it to produce methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas many times more harmful than CO2 and a major contributor to climate change. And then in our communities, putting food waste in the garbage causes some interesting odors, which can attract animals like bears and raccoons. So removing food waste from the garbage eliminates these issues and reduces volume. So for the municipality, this will save on operating and disposal costs, save space in your landfill. For residents, less waste means fewer trips to the waste site, less money on gas, and less money on those clear bags. Now, we often get asked, how did we solve this already? There are green bins. These are common in big cities with high population density and the right infrastructure, but it's not for everyone. And many people in your community like backyard compost. We think this is a great solution. However, many people might not have the space, ability, or desire to do this at home. And then finally, the easiest solution is to continue landfilling the organic waste, but the long-term impacts are costly and they're harmful to the environment. So at Food Cycler, we proposed a different way to deal with our food waste, which really focuses on making it easy to deal with and with a great user experience. Essentially, we built a small kitchen appliance about the size of a bread machine. You put in your food waste, and that can include meat, poultry, fish, dairy, even some bones. You push a button, and in a matter of hours, you have a dry, sterile, odorless, and nutrient-rich soil amendment that comes out. The resulting byproduct can be used in your gardening or landscaping. It can go into your existing composter. It can be given to a local farm. It can even be used as an alternative source of home eating. The machine can be used anywhere with a plug, like a kitchen, basement, or heated garage. Each cycle takes between 4 to 8 hours to complete and uses less than 1 kilowatt hour of power. So depending on where you live, only a couple cents per cycle. From an environmental standpoint, the Food Cycler compares to backyard and central composting without taking into account transportation emissions, but it represents an approximate reduction of greenhouse gas impact by 95% versus sending food waste to the landfill. In terms of the economic impact, the solution offers a return on investment by significantly reducing your waste management costs. In the short term, you have less disposal and lower operating costs, and in the long term, you might get many more years out of your landfill and achieve higher diversion without implementing costly curbside programs. Now, one thing that we've learned from working with our municipal partners is that their residents are very interested in being part of the solution. They want to try new things. They want options. And they want their government to bring these things to their community. With the Food Cycler, you get to bring something innovative and tangible to your residents. They don't need to live in a big city to be able to divert their organics. We believe that food waste diversion should be available to all Canadians, no matter where you live. And on top of this social pressure is the impact of the regulations that are coming to us here in Ontario. There are a number of diversion targets I'm sure you know are coming into effect in the next couple of years. And we're also expecting new directives regarding methane emissions stemming from the recent Glasgow Climate Act. With the Food Cycler, what we're doing is reducing waste at the source. We're focusing on that low-hanging fruit, as I like to call it, because since food waste accounts for such a large portion of household waste, it's the single most impactful strategy to achieving these targets. I mentioned earlier that we are working with several municipalities across Canada. An example is the city of Nelson in BC. They ran 2 pilot projects with 250 households receiving a Food Cycler unit. The results here were overwhelmingly positive, with an average rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars, and a significant diversion of food waste was achieved, and that continues to this day. And following the success of those pilots, Nelson has voted to put a Food Cycler in every home in their city of 10,000 people. So earlier this year, Food Cycler was selected as a semi-finalist for Impact Canada's Food Waste Reduction Challenge. This is a 3-part initiative from the Government of Canada to help our country reduce our food waste. As a semi-finalist, we were awarded a $100,000 prize, and we we were tasked with finding Canadian municipalities as implementation partners. So we're using this funding to invest directly into pilot projects at a heavily subsidized price. These will help us move into the next stages of the challenge, which come with $400,000 and $1.5 million prize in stage 2 and 3. And future funding will continue to be used to invest in the programs for Canadians, and municipalities that partner with us from stage 1 will have first right of refusal on future funding. So a pilot program runs for about 12 weeks, and it works like this. Residents will purchase a food cycler at a subsidized rate from their municipality. They use the unit, tracking the number of cycles that they run every week. At the end, the residents get to keep their food cycler, and we ask them to complete a brief survey so that we can evaluate the success of the program. The results of the survey are good sources of data that can support future waste management decisions, or to support an application for funding to expand the program. The Green Municipal Fund through FCM is a potential source of funding, and the good news is that the food cycler solution meets GMS criteria and high performance environmental targets. So here's an overview of how the funded pilot programs are laid out, including our pilot size recommendations. For a municipality of your size, we would recommend a pilot of at least 100 households. They work based on a subsidy model, where Food Cycle Science provides a discount, and we add in the federal investment from Impact Canada to get the price of the unit reduced by 50%. We then ask the municipality to subsidize the cost by $100 per unit plus shipping. So the resident only ends up paying $150 for a machine that retails at $500. And remember, after the 12-week pilot, the food cycler is theirs to keep. These are just recommendations based on a model that has been successful with our current municipal partners, but we can of course explore other options that are tailored to your needs or your budget. But to give you a bit of insight, in the city of Kenora with 15,000 people, they opted for a 250 household pilot, and they were fully subscribed within 6 days of opening up registration. So we would welcome the Township of Stone Mills as a partner in this challenge. We think that your community would be a great fit for the benefits of the program. And once again, I'd like to thank you for having me this evening, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Christina. I'm going to go to council and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hi there. I just wondered at the end of the pilot, what's supposed to happen after that?
If I heard that correctly, you're wondering what is to happen at the end of the pilot?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's correct.
Perfect, so thank you for the question. The pilot is meant to gauge the interest and viability of the food cycler as a food waste solution in your community. So the goal here would be to expand the program if successful. And at that stage, we would be able to look at funding opportunities for you to establish this in your community.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I think I missed it there. What was the expense for the municipality on the 100 household trial? You said, was it $100 per unit that the municipality would kick in, and then it would cost the homeowner $150? Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. So on 100 households at $100 per unit as a municipal subsidy, the price would be $10,000 plus shipping.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. How long has this device been on the market? What's the company history?
Yes, our company was founded in 2011, but we've been manufacturing and distributing this residential unit for 7 years. So it's been on the market for 7 years, and the lifespan of the unit is approximately 7 years.
Great, go ahead.
Thank you. So, so they're still, everyone that's been manufactured is still functioning. They don't sort of fall apart after a couple of years. what about servicing parts and maintenance costs?
Yeah, that's right. So many of the units that have been sold since day one are still on the market, and with improvements over the years, the machines are better built today. And so we're quite comfortable with the 7-year lifespan and do offer warranties for up to that period of time. But the out-of-the-box warranty is 1 year, and we provide support. We have an in-house team that can troubleshoot, repair, or replace any malfunctions.
Thank you. I see it handles pretty well everything. It said some bones. I assume that's poultry bones. I'm assuming it won't handle harder material like beef or pork or lamb bones. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So any of the harder bones like beef and pork bones, it cannot handle. It does have a grinding function at the bottom of the bucket, so it could jam the unit. And things like peach and nectarine pits are also not great for the unit. But it will handle chicken bones, fish bones, meat, dairy, even the shellfish, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Doug.
If I'm correct, I thought I heard you say that the non-subsidized price was $500, is that correct?
The retail price of the unit is $500. So in North America, they're sold through Vitamix. Anybody can get one today at $500, but the subsidized price for our municipal program today is $250.
Thank you.
Christina, just one question. If the municipality decided to get involved with this, when does that have to be done by, or when would you want it, or like a bit of time frame I'm looking for?
Sorry, I had trouble hearing. You're asking about potential timeframes for our program?
Yeah, if the municipality got involved, when would you want us to be on board, or what's the timeline?
Perfect, great question. So what we're looking for is for a commitment before the end of the year in order to secure the Impact Canada funding, because our stage 1 of this challenge wraps up on January 10th of 2022. But the pilot program could roll out next year. Any time really, we're looking for Q1, or if you have a lot of seasonal residents and think it might be better when they come into town, you could do something in May or June of next year. But the commitment we'd be looking for is by December 31st.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I guess with that being said, okay, thank you, Christina, for your presentation. And we will discuss it here at some time.
Thank you, Ribbon Council. I'd welcome follow-up questions, and my contact information is on the last slide of the presentation. So thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. That means
Move to receive the presentation. Yeah.
moved by Doug, seconded by Debbie. All in favor of that motion? Motion's carried. Is there a next person? Next person, I'll get Christina, or I'll give you. Don't worry.
Hi, Brendan. Hi, this is Christina. We're just getting you up on our screen. Yeah, you are. You have to be able to see the council, but they can see you, and I've given you co-hosting abilities so that you can screen share your presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Christina. So I'm live right now.
Yes, you are.
That is fantastic to hear. Hello, members of council. It is such a pleasure and privilege to be speaking with you this evening. I'm going to share my screen, and I hope that you could just please confirm if this shows up.
Yes, it does, and if you can speak just a little bit louder, I can't get it any louder in here, it's echoing a little.
Oh, okay, I understand. Is that better for the volume there?
Just give us a second here. We're gonna try to work on something here.
So much? Yes, no, maybe?
A little bit, we're just gonna see if we can move the microphone a little bit closer.
Okay, great.
Just see. Okay, do you want to speak and we'll see if this will do it?
Sure thing. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina. Good evening, council. Hi, my name is Brendan McKee, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to be speaking to you tonight about this project on the go, which is a parquet landscape design for the property located at 2553 County Road 4, right in the heart of Camden East, right there. You can kind of see that important corner in the township. Lots of information to go through, so I'll try to be as succinct as possible, and I've got my timer here, so I will do my best to keep it succinct. The structure of tonight's presentation, just give you an introduction. I'm Brendan McKee. I'm a landscape architect, principal landscape architect at my company, Bombas Ecoscapes. We focus on landscape architecture being Kingston-based. We were hired on as the consultant landscape architects for this project. So that's the introduction. I'll move forward into the purpose of this project, basically, why I was hired on and what we hope to achieve through this project. I'll talk a bit more about the project timeline, kind of the origins of this project, where it began, where we are now, where we will be going. I will be kind of, again, wrapped into that timeline. I'll be kind of setting the context about some major events that kind of led to this project happening. And then we'll get into the kind of meat and bones of it, which is the concept development. So taking all the information gathered through our stages and translating it to physical form. Towards the end, I will kind of reiterate some of the strategic goals that this proposal achieves. Kind of making reference to the previous council report, and we'll conclude with some Q&A. So without further ado, let's just dive into it. So the purpose of this project is to provide professional landscape architecture consultation and design services to assist the client, Township, in the planning and development of a future parquet located at the intersection of County Road 1 East and County Road 4. There's a little context map there to get an understanding. Basically, there's been a lot of legwork done on this project to date, and that includes a public consultation session, which kind of confirmed the use as a green space and public parquet. City staff have prepared a concept as well. So there's been a lot of base work done for this. But I was hired on, I suppose, to apply a professional lens to this planning exercise and to provide details where appropriate.
Sorry to interrupt you, but your slideshow is not moving on our screen.
Oh, are you seeing some movement there?
Nope.
Oh, no.
We're just,
Frozen in time?
no, I think what you might have to click on the right document and then say share that document.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you see my screen here? Like this?
It says purpose now.
It says purpose now, but it's not full screen?
No.
Okay. Now, if I were to go full screen, does that show as full screen?
No.
It doesn't. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I think that just put you as full screen.
Okay. Let's try it again. How about I'll do desktop share?
Yes.
How about that? Is that better?
There we go. Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Yeah, so just to wrap up that thought, the goal of the project is to kind of refine the details that we've made it so far for this project and to provide this package to council to support the budget for implementation. Quick project timeline. I broke it down into 4 major categories for time events. There's stuff that predates this, like the history of the building itself. But for the sake of this presentation, to be succinct, I'll just focus on these categories. So beginning August 2020, there was a storm event and the response to that. I'll go into details on all of these. This is just an overview. Followed by that storm event, there was a public consultation and development proposal that followed that, which was requested by council. After that, there's a concept development phase where I've been hired on and working with city staff to develop some concepts to meet the goals and objectives of the project. And looking into the future, spring of 2022, we look to implement the preferred plan. So just really going to skim over this briefly because I'm sure you guys probably know more about this than I do, quite frankly. Storm event and response. So this is the Camden East Library pre-destruction. I hate to use that word, but that's, you know, when it was still erect, this is what it looked like. I want to really kind of bring emphasis to the heritage brick and the decorative eaves on this building. Those are some elements that we will discuss later in the presentation. So come August 1st, 2020, there was a major windstorm event that swept through the heart of Camden East and caused mass destruction, most notably as well to this Camden East Library, as can be seen in these images. Following that event, there was a structural engineer report that came out to assess the quality of the remnant building. The engineers recommended demolition, just was beyond repair, and council approved a direction to demolish the building. But I should mention that in addition to that direction to demolish, they did initiate a public consultation and redevelopment proposal, which would allow the public to have input on how this site would be developed. Oh, just one step back, the direction to demolish, there were salvage elements of that demolition, which were the heritage brick and the decorative eaves, as far as I know, and we have access to those materials. So as for the redevelopment proposal, city staff and their report to council created this word bubble to, I guess, summarize the nature of responses when seeking input. The 7 overarching themes that emerged was to, well, one, to bring back the post office. Through the city's own investigations, there was too many constraints to actually rebuild on the site, so that was nixed. So then we moved down to having a green space, parquet, and pavilion, and that is ultimately, you know, the preferred direction for the site. A couple of things I'd like to lump into that are actually complementary uses and not exclusive. The idea of having a farmer's market or a memorial, like a war or historical memorial there, or like a visitor center. These are some complementary uses that could actually be accommodated in addition to a green space, and we'll talk about that. Kind of what we heard here. These were some interesting kind of quotes that were pulled from the public consultation session. And these were helpful just to get an understanding on how people could perceive the space being used, like how could they interact with the space themselves. A lot of it kind of speaks to using this parquet as a place to kind of, as leisurely social gatherings, you know, drink your coffee, eat your treats, but also bigger ideas, you know, having a farmer's market or maybe having a bit of a performance area. The last quote there, the anchor in the community, kind of really resonated with me, just because of its location and of its social importance too. So all of this was considered to visualize how the space would be used. So the vision statement that was put out in this council report, in summary, staff proposed that the parquet be constructed with a gazebo that would function as a communal gathering space for members of Camden East, residents of the township, and visitors. So that very much echoes the nature of comments received. And this was the concept that was produced by city staff to kind of illustrate how this site might take physical form based on this direction of developing it into a public green space. So that brings us to a concept development stage. The working team for this particular segment, Mr. Jason Thompson, Jacob Detler, Alan Fenwick, and myself, Brendan McKee, were part of the, I guess, the steering committee to kind of help navigate this process. The process that we took was kind of threefold. Phase 1 was understanding the project, so I involved a site meeting with the working team to go over the council report, you know, all the information that has brought us up to date. And in addition to that, we talked about kind of the maintenance considerations and the construction considerations, because this project will be built and maintained by city staff. So being able to maintain it and build it, like, it needs to be feasible. So those were good considerations that we kept in mind. Phase 2 was taking all these understandings and creating some concepts based on these goals and objectives. So I had a chance to steering committee around September, where we talked about the concepts and finessed some details about it, so that we arrived on a package that we were confident to be able to present to council. And there we are, phase 3, which is tonight, is our presentation to council. Just looking at the site, here we are looking at it from an aerial perspective. Just go through it, some utility wires around it, residences flanking it to the south and the east, busy roadways to the north and the west, lots of utility wires above head. It's basically just hardscape capped right now. After the demolition of the site, it was just gravelled in, serving as a blank slate until redevelopment could happen. Beautiful heritage kind of building there in the, which is kitty corner to this site, and a very attractive view that we actually kind of want to frame and encourage. Some views you don't really want to encourage, maybe towards the residences or gas stations, no offense. Some you really do want to frame. This is our site here, 410 square meters, not huge, probably about the size of like a half tennis court. If you were to count the outside of the foul lines, so not big, so that's a constraint, but there are opportunities as well. And so let's talk just a quick brief analysis. The opportunities, central location, serving as a community hub, I mean, that's probably the strongest thing going for it. The public support, the fact that the public wants to see this space turn into a green space in the parkette, that's, kind of paves the way for success. The history of the site, how it functioned as a library, storm swept through to demolish it. That's a really interesting story that, is worth telling. And we believe that the landscape can serve a role in helping to tell that story. There's complementary businesses. So like the McCormick General Store close by, I mean, that's a good spot to get your refreshments and your beverages, whatever, and then you can take it over and enjoy it in the park. So it's nice to have a complementary use like that. The parcel across to the west, that's going to undergo development. It's currently a parking lot, but maybe if we have success with this, we can encourage a more kind of green application when that site gets developed. It's a big blank slate, so we can let our creative, we can be creative in how we design, not too many constraints there. And vegetative buffers. So there is some privacy buffers around the east side and the south, which is helpful to kind of delineate public from private space. As far as constraints go, there's a site triangle. You'll see that in future slides. Basically, it's a safety measure around intersections. It's a requisite so that these areas are impediment-free and preventing visual impediments for the safety of vehicles. So that was mandatory to keep this space free. Capped hardscape, growing things on top of it might be tricky, but we can talk about that. Overhead utility lines kind of affects the nature of like the size of trees that you grow. It's inadvisable to grow trees wherever there's utility lines. There's some underground stuff happening too. There's a well and a cistern that we've designed around. Maybe some foundations around there, but we understand that it was dug pretty deep, so we can not too much of a constraint going down. But it's easier to build up than it would need to go down in the site. Adjacent residences, you kind of want to be respectful of that, not have public life spill into private spaces. Busy and noisy roadways, not the nicest microclimate if there's cars that can buy, noise pollution, smell pollution. The construction complexity and the budget, that kind of speaks to just that it needs to be an implementable plan from using city forces. Maintenance, same. Controlled entrance towards this intersection. Really want to discourage any sort of jaywalking. So really funneling people through that intersection is the safest means of getting people into the site and enjoying it. So with all of that being said, these are the considerations that come in our mind as we go into concept development. So this is concept number 1, really feeding off of the concept that was developed by city staff and just applying some more detail to it. So I won't ask for all of you to read through the words here because there are some images to kind of help better describe it. I'll start by saying along this side of the roadway, there is a separate initiative that's going to actually widen the sidewalk to 2.5 meters to kind of mirror what's happening along this western roadway. Somewhat related to the project, but doesn't relate to the budget of this project. But basically, using the idea of the gazebo and having this as a central feature here as a point of gathering, slightly raised. The idea would be to reuse some of the salvaged brick as a sort of brick foundation. of this structure to kind of help tell the story. That would be done in conjunction with interpretive signage on site to kind of help tell the story. I have a bit of a written piece from Shirley Bailey of Heritage Frontenac. It's limited, her kind of understanding of the history of the site. It was basically just pulled from Jacob Detler through a conversation. The municipality took possession in the early 1980s. Building was leased to Harriswick magazines. They used as library, daycare, local post office until demolition. It doesn't really say much that we don't already know. So hopefully we can dig deeper, maybe ask members of the community to pitch in and maybe get more insight into that history to make that interpretive signage just that much more stronger. Brick banding, which is actually going to be just colored concrete. We discussed maybe salvaging the brick and using it as a hard surface, but the wear and tear would probably be just too much. So instead, we're going to look at a colored concrete with a brick stamping to kind of mimic, that brick heritage. So this site would be raised. We've got native pollinated gardens that surround this raised area here. 6 foot wide accessible concrete pathway that goes around. Ample seating that kind of looks onto this central space here. The site would be flanked by black vinyl chain link that follows the flankage of this home. That's also good for safety measures, like a septet measure, to have kind of permeable sites through. But when we get into the backyards, it's probably better consideration to give kind of a wood privacy, a more private treatment, just as consideration to the neighbors. And then a bunch of small flowering trees here to occupy some space. As I mentioned, we're constrained in what we can do in terms of canopy trees. So small flower trees are interesting because the soil volume works, and you can have interesting kind of balloon events that go with the small flowering trees, which can be an event in and of itself. So that kind of speaks to concept one. The cost estimate shown here, 97K or something, which includes a 50% contingency to account for the unknown. As if we dig down, we only know so much about what's going on in our feet. Concept two, this is the preferred concept. This is the one that, the working group has kind of decided as being the preferred concept that we are presenting to you. It takes this form here. So some commonalities, the fencing treatments remain the same, the sidewalk expansion, the brick banding around the edges, all of that remains consistent. Some of the things that change would be having kind of a rectangular shed style gazebo that sits kind of further back in the site and then opens onto a common lawn space here. So that this really serves more as kind of a chance as a performance, like it's a gathering space, but it's also a chance to have maybe semi-formal performances or be able to support farmers markets or just a bevy of other types of events. It's a lot more flexible, this space, than concept one, which makes it more attractive. Again, park benches, we have armor stone seatings that kind of, flank these sides here. Having it raised makes it easier to have planted areas instead of digging down, as we mentioned, those constraints. And a combination of having it raised with trees, that creates a nice buffer that kind of encloses the space a little bit more. And the armor stone seats, that actually can serve as informal seating as well. So plenty of room for seating that faces onto the park or faces onto the street, so that hopefully engages the streetscape just a little bit more. Rain garden at the back to kind of receive water coming off the hardscape as well as the roof there. And as a means of showing some environmental stewardship that the city is doing its effort to promote local pollinators and other environmental efforts. So we talked about the infrastructure, the elements that come together to create the form of the park. But what's really interesting is how people use the park and interact with it and engage with it. That's what makes this space come alive. Otherwise, it's just a combination of elements. So when thinking about this park, here are some possible activities that one could hold throughout the seasons. So in the springtime, having the Blossom Festival with the small flowering trees, I would recommend servicing red buds. They're natives, they're great supporters, host plants for very many important caterpillars, birds, and pollinators. And they've got great fall color, which I'll show, as well as spring. Horticulture appreciation, I mean, there could be maybe some gardening groups who might want to lend a hand at maybe the maintenance or the implementation of some of the garden areas. Sitting, reading, eating, I think that's probably going to be the bulk of the activity in this space. Just, kind of casual enjoyment of the space. Lawn lounge, not a big lawn, but it's possible. In the summertime, the gazebo could definitely serve as a chance for concerts and performances, which could be held in tandem with some farmer market events. In the less active times, you could have lawn games or kind of yoga sessions of common lawn day. As we move into the fall colors, being able to appreciate that in the small parkettes, that's a plus. Having a pumpkin parade around the Halloween time, it's very popular in Toronto, from where I'm from. Even having outdoor movie events, that's popular in, I know, Kingston Square there. And like a movie screen, a temporary movie screen could be set up in that shed, gazebo shed, and just informal seating in the lawn area. Farmers Harvest Market, that speaks to kind of the other farmers market that could happen around the season. In the winter, you got to get your vitamin D somehow. So finding your nice sunny spots to kind of sunbathe is really important. I definitely see this area here as a good spot to kind of get your sun in there. So exposure should be a good spot. Snow sculptures in that open space, holiday events, maybe lighting the trees, winter warming stations, just temporary installs to get people activated and more involved in public life. So just trying to get the park to work harder, Here are some ideas for project enhancements. So these go above the budgets that we've laid out here, but things that can be implemented over time, or if council decides that it's a good thing to include in additional implementation, that can be done too. Birdhouses. A thought might be, what about a birdhouse that looks like the Camden East Library? You can make that an installation and have that as kind of a fun feature that also serves as an interpretive element. Bee hotels, that's complementary to kind of native pollinator gardens. Wall-top seating, that's looked at mostly for kind of popping on the armor sun seat walls, much more comfortable under the pond, especially in cold weather. Fence murals really kind of activates the space and kind of creates a nicer background than just kind of wood. You hire some local artists or even school groups maybe to apply their artistic touches. Having a tourist info kiosk, maybe a chance of wayfinding to have visitors help understand their surroundings a bit better. Picnic benches so that you can have more long stays, I guess, and have your lunch in a more comfortable type of amenity. Community boards as a means of kind of having as a signpost to kind of share what's going on in the community and allow that to be a posting board for the community. Some additional enhancements to consider: waste receptacles, drinking fountains, seasonal planters, and night lighting, all of which will complement the use of the space. The big move, this is from Nelson, BC. They've got a performance stage for their farmers markets. The idea of, really, because this gazebo is such a main feature of each of the designs, perhaps hiring a local architect to really bang it, make it a really important feature and unique to add to the kind of culture of stone mills. The architect in this case, the roof line replicates the mountain ridge in Nelson, BC. That was their inspiration. Perhaps inspiration can be drawn elsewhere within the stone mills community, but that's a consideration. Now, as far as the strategic goals, I think I might be capped at my time here. The strategic goals and objectives, that is just kind of replicated from what the initial council report was. I took some liberties to look even deeper into it, and I think I want to put some check marks next to some other items. So not checked in the council summary, but could be considered. Township's municipal infrastructure needs. Now, I consider this a type of social infrastructure, and an important one at that, as a chance to kind of get the community out and about and engaging in public life. And social infrastructure in this case, I think is really important. Arts and culture, having these, murals or temporary installations, I hope kind of contributes to the vibrance of the area and the uniqueness of the township. Climate change, well, conversion to a green space, which, increases canopy coverage and provides opportunities for local pollinators. And not to mention reducing kind of urban heat island effects and all of that kind of stuff. I'd say there's significant steps forward in terms of climate change combatant with this proposal. and heritage. I mean, it's such a crucial driving point of this project to retell this story so that it's not lost kind of over the annals of time. And it really just adds another level of value to this project. And it's a really interesting story to bring to the forefront. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll just open the floor if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Brendan. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brendan?
Faintly. Pardon me here. What I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to mute my computer here, and then I'm going to turn on the YouTube.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Brendan, we won't be able to hear you if you mute yourself.
Naturally. Okay, makes sense. Well, then I'll strain my ear and try to listen as best I can. But maybe, Christina, if you could relay some of that message.
Okay, Brendan, can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, and anybody got any questions? Go ahead, Doug, and then we'll go to Kim.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the concept 2, as that's the preferred one. Just a little background information. First of all, I believe that that building originally was used as a bank in the village of Camden East. And I'm sure that you would find something in the history of Camden East or the history of Lennox and Addington. I have a feeling that it will probably be remembered there. If not, there are some residents, I'm thinking of Corlin Mahler, for example, who may have a very good background knowledge of it, of the building's uses and that. Referring to concept 2, I have a few questions. I like the concept predominantly, and I have a couple of concerns. Park benches, I see you have 3 listed in your estimate, all along one side, if I'm looking at it right. Now, I see that you're showing wood. Is that just an example? Because I would question the use of wood. Wood is very susceptible to damage, vandalism.
Yeah, this was kind of used as an example. I don't know if there's like a park standard that is used in the township, if there's like a preferred model of bench that the township uses.
So it could be steel or aluminum, and we can discuss that then. Okay. All right, you also mentioned small flowering trees. I see that you have 8 in, if I'm reading it right. Are they all, what are they, flowering crabs, or do you have different types?
That's a good question. How I envisioned it was kind of service berries, trees that kind of max out at about 30 feet, that have like a beautiful kind of wall shape to them. Stunning kind of spring flower, with, kind of fall interest as well. Whether or not it's kind of all kind of a monoculture of trees, if I can use that term, or if it's a couple of trees that are coordinated in their bloom times, so that you have that kind of mass effect. I suppose that was to have kind of one species, so that really amplifies that blooming effect. And I would recommend service berries. Secondary, I would say cercis, redbuds. After that, probably some nice cherries. After that, I'd probably recommend kind of crab apple.
Yeah, okay. I'm only asking that question because I'm thinking of the lot location, the way you have it orientated. You're looking to the west, which is into the sun for the later part of the day. I'm thinking of shade, that's all. And some types of flowering trees don't supply very good shade. They're a small leaf, after the blossom. Okay? And there's no, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just questioning, what was your reasoning for not putting the plant in the center? Did you want to keep that grass area as strictly open for land? I think you mentioned it possibly seeding or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of that was just kind of having a common open lawn space there where you can have informal seating. It would be much more flexible to allow for kind of stalls to pop up if you wanted to support like farmers markets. And just having that as more kind of an open space that's flexible in its use.
Okay. On the raised gardens, 2 questions on that. What type of planting were you thinking of putting into that? And can they also be used for seeds?
Yes, sir. So the raised stones, I would recommend having roughly about a 24-inch block. Maybe just a couple inches down below the concrete surface there to achieve probably a 21 or 22-inch like finished height, which is a very comfortable seated height. So then you get a lot more kind of seeding opportunities around this planted area. And because it's built up, you can fill up the soil, which then becomes like viable planting medium and be able to support these smaller trees. So as far as the trees go, we can talk about that. As far as like the understory goes, I guess, I was thinking probably lower ornamental grasses, probably like fountain grasses might be nice. What's kind of important to have is, you have a canopy and then you kind of have a lower kind of ground cover, but still have like a visual, the ability for like the other side to see into the site. So that you actually kind of have that strata. That's from like the safety design kind of perspective. So I would recommend, ornamental grasses are really tough. They do really well against, especially, when there's maintenance practices of salting along the roadway. Having raised beds are helpful in that regard. But ornamental grasses, kind of are tough as nails. There are some types of native pollinators, like probably look to maybe some anemones. You can probably get some milkweed in there as well. But you can do like a design composition that's all native. But when you get into these kind of more difficult like roadway frontages, there are some plants that are not native that are just hard as nails and better suited to it.
Okay.
So that's a long-winded way of saying I would recommend just grasses as kind of ground cover.
All right, thank you. Lastly, your shed, I like that concept, facing west, the beautiful evening, you get the sunlight out of that. But when I opened that up, I see that you had seating in there, something like a McDonald's had. Was that included? Were you including that in your plans?
So you're looking specifically at the kind of 2 tables that are surface mounted within that structure?
That just happened to be in what you picked.
I just use that as kind of a visual reference. That's so funny that you say it's kind of really
So my thought process was there, if those tables weren't included, there should be some type of seating, whether it be a bench at the back or something there. Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Anybody else have any questions? Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any plan to put electricity to the gazebo or the building there itself?
I'm sorry, I did not catch that.
He was just asking whether there's any plans to add electricity to the gazebo itself.
Yes. That's a good question. If Jason Sands is present, maybe he could be better suited to answer that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It's not a conversation we specifically had at the working group, but we think it's definitely an inclusion that should be added for future programming and use of that site. Something that would be factored in.
Okay. And as far as there is a well there on site, and are we going to utilize that? And even just for watering plants and that type of thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything here. So that's just one of the other questions I had.
So Councillor Richmond is asking whether you're going to utilize the well that is on site at the moment.
That's a very good point, and I'm sorry I didn't touch on that. So if you can see where my mouse is right there, is that visible where the hand is?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the approximate location of the well. There's kind of a little stub there. I know Jacob was kind of speaking, saying, you know, we don't include it in the presentation, but it might be a bit of a, like, we'll investigate and see what can be done. So I believe it's a well or a cistern that's under the ground there. So I believe there's intentions to take advantage of that. It's just at this point in time, I don't know if we know how vital it is, like, if that oil can actually be used. But if it can be, then all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm suggesting just for even watering plants and such, otherwise you're gonna have to truck water to it to keep plant life.
Jason, you answer this?
Thank you, Reed Smith. Through the conversations of the working group, there was consideration given to the use of that well and hesitation from the perspective of potential users or visitors using it for drinking water. We discussed signage to try to potentially limit liability. There was further conversation about the installation of a cistern, buried sort of tank, underground cistern that could be filled more in bulk. That would be more able to be used for the watering of on-site vegetation, as opposed to carrying or trucking it individually in the summer months for watering. So that's being explored, both of those two fronts.
Anybody else have? Go ahead, Doug.
When the daycare was there, they couldn't clean the well up, it was contaminated, they had to buy water all the time. So they wouldn't use it for anything but the toilets.
Okay, anything else for Brendan? Okay, you can pass it on, tell him thank you, Christina, and thanks for his presentation.
Brenda, I don't know if you heard that, Reed Smith said thank you very much for the presentation, and good night.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, I look forward to seeing how this progresses. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, I'm looking for, I wrote in here, to receive the delegation from Brendan McKee and further council accept the support proposal development 2 concept for the subject property Stone Mills Parkette landscape design. Moved by Doug, second by Debbie. All in favor of that motion? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and I'm in favor of the motion, but I would either want another motion or in addition to this one to, assuming we're in general comfortable with this design, to put it out for some public input before we finalize the adoption, if that's suitable for the mover and seconders.
Did you not already do that, John?
No, we didn't. We put out a survey, and most people wanted a post office, and we can't do that. And then the parquet was the next one up. But let's just get some public input on the design of the parquet. What's the harm in that? Then we'll have thoroughly consulted with the community.
Okay, you got the motion, Davidson. Would you want to reword it or no?
Well, I'm just a little uncomfortable because if you ask the question, you'll get 100 different answers. Okay, and I'm sure if we ask the question, unless everybody will be happy with the part, but there'll be 100 different, oh, I like this tree over here, this tree there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what concerns me, if we might just get into a situation where we can't do it. I think we've agreed on a part, and unless there's something, I'm just concerned that we extend the process, and when we extend the process, we run the cost. We're already a year and a half, I didn't see this done,
Okay, I'll go back to you. Do you want to stick to your original motion?
Yes.
Okay, and who seconded that motion? Debbie did. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Everybody in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3. Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed the motion? 1, 2, 3. So
It's lost.
that motion's lost. Right, Brian? Right. Okay. Good enough. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. John.
So I'll just make the same motion as Doug, but ask for some public comment for the next month or something like that. Put it up on our website. We can say no, Doug, to anything that seems unworkable. Maybe someone's got a good idea for a plant species, maybe a slight adjustment. I'm generally personally in favor of the design. I suspect some people are going to want to see a tree in the middle of that lawn. I'd be in favor of something like that.
And I'm not against it if we can limit it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go along with you, I'll second your motion, if we can limit it to 1 month on our website, and then review it, because I wanna see it done in the spring.
So do I.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, comment? I just, looking at those designs, I'm comfortable with it, I think it's gonna be real busy for a parking spot. This spot is pretty small, and looking all together, I think it's gonna be busy, busy, busy. That's just my comment, anyway. We have a motion on the floor, everybody in favor of motion? Motion's carried.
You can make a comment.
Yeah.
You can make a public comment.
No, I think it's I don't think a public comment, yeah, I just think it's very busy for that corner. I would just like to get down there and see, okay, here's the size for that tree, here's the size for there, because we're not talking about like the tourist right time big in this hall. You know, and that's just my thoughts on it. I would just like to say, okay, here's the size of the tree, here's the size of that there. Because I don't want to be too busy, just in my thoughts. Anyway, just gonna comment on it. Okay, we'll move on to the bylaw reading, bylaw Kyle Act, Drainage Act. Looking for first, second, third, moved by John, second by Doug. Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a question. I know we discussed this, it was quite a while ago. Does the township have any obligation to this loan, or is it just directly to the farmer that's doing it?
Go ahead, Christina, or whoever wants to go with this. Go ahead.
Okay, so the loan is $50,000 and it comes from OMAFRA, so the township pays the loan, we wait for the money to come from OMAFRA. Then the farmer pays us and we pay OMAFRA. So it goes on title to the farmer's property, so it's a lien against their property. And if in time, say, they don't make a payment, we're going to apply that as a right of first lien on your taxes, so that we can collect it or put it into a tax requisition should we not pay.
Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for. If the person sold or reneged on the mortgage or something, they're still it's still there and covered. So that's great. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. And is that interest rate prescribed by OMAFRA, Christina?
So you've already done the other steps that OMAFRA required. Right now it is prescribed through OMAFRA. I don't know how long that program is going to last. We've heard there might be changes to it, but at this point in time, this is what the process is.
Okay, we'll move on to Manager of Development Services, Deputy Clerk Sands, reopening of Township Community Halls. Did we pass? Oh, I thought we did.
We moved in second, I'm not sure you called it.
Oh, okay, all in favor of that last motion? Carried. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Reeve. Just to follow up, November 1st meeting, there was several absences from respect to staff and council, and there was a report on the agenda as it relates to the reopening of multiple municipal halls. And I say multiple municipal halls as in not all, however, 4 of our municipal halls. There was a recommendation at the previous meeting from staff to council seeking how to essentially clean and sanitize halls once they've been rented in under our COVID declared state of emergency. This report before you this evening is somewhat different with respect to what its inclusions are from what was before us at the November 1st meeting. In that, there's a cleaning and sanitizing requirement affidavit that's attached to the report this evening that would apply to all user groups that are lesser than $75, as that's the minimum charge for our contracted cleaner. So what staff are proposing and have before you this evening is the execution of a cleaning and sanitizing requirement in addition to the rental for those non-for-profit groups, church groups, community groups, and seniors groups for the township facilities that include the Newburgh Hall, Enterprise Hall, multi-purpose room, at the Stone Mills Recreation Center, as well as the Tamworth Library. One of the other deferral conditions of the last meeting was to get an understanding of the use and the occupancy of our township facilities. There's been a summary included in the report before you this evening that includes 2018 and 2019 frequencies of rental, and it differentiates the different user groups just to give a sense as to its use. And as you can see, the majority of each of those facilities has been rented by the user groups of $75 or lesser in terms of their rental rate. I believe that covers what's before you this evening, and if there are any questions for any of us staff before you this evening, we'll have to answer. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this report? Seeing none. Looking for a motion to receive the report.
By Sherry, second by Kevin.
Any more discussion? Go ahead, John.
That's to receive and accept staff's recommendations, right? So we'll implement this fee schedule and these requirements.
That's what the report or the council, well, I guess there's somewhere.
I just asked for a clarification on it. It's talking about $20 plus HST for nonprofit groups, but in an earlier statement, it's talking about the cleaning of the hall. So are we gonna allow them to do their own cleaning? Is that the way I read it?
Through Reeve Smith, that's correct.
Okay.
The $20 for the user groups of not-for-profit, church group, community group, and senior group was established in our fee bylaw, municipal fee bylaw, that was passed in 2019. That's not a focus of tonight's report. That's just the way in which we've addressed the different user groups. But there's not a proposed increase to that fee based on cleaning, because we would download that responsibility of cleaning and sanitizing through an attached affidavit to those user groups.
I have a concern on this here motion. I look at the fact that we have 2 Lions clubs in our municipality, and they do fabulous work for the municipality. They've got the Zamboni, they've got tables, they've got chairs, look after the park, and I don't feel comfortable with those 2 groups paying that $20. So I will pass on that. Because I think, it's surprising what they do. I guess we all seen that letter there and all that. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, and that's why I asked for that letter to be included, was that when we pass this tonight, we do that, and I agree with you, the Tamworth Lions have done yeoman's work for us and continue to do yeoman's work for us with the park and everything that they've done, that we handle it in a different way, so that the policy is static, and that we handle it maybe through a grant process or something for them so it ends up, it doesn't cost. So that's what I was thinking with the letter coming.
Okay, so.
Maybe do it now, right?
Well, I'd say, if you're gonna deal with it right now, instead of coming back to it.
Well, basically, I just said, and I think the policy should be static. So we approve the policy as we just approved it, but in the case of the Lions Club, who does yeoman community service work, or any others that if we find, that fit that category, that we would handle the money through a reimbursement of some type, okay, for them. And I put it that way because I know some people will not be happy with the charge, but most people play the cards and I can find $20 somewhere. But the people that are working in the community, like the Lions Club, you're just taking it out of one pocket, put it in another, so I would say that we deal with that in either a grant or what's the right words I'm looking for?
Rebate.
A donation or a rebate, yeah.
Okay, David, you have something to say? Yeah.
What I'm wondering if that would apply to fundraising events at the Lions House as well. Like I'm thinking Cameron has some, and then you has their jamborees and stuff in the hall. They would pay full rental for that though, right? And it just be meetings that would be waived.
Well, I don't know what Doug said, but my thoughts were, is, I mean, they meet twice a month in those two places, wave.
Yeah.
That's my thought, I don't know what the.
But not the fundraising part.
No. Okay, do you need anything else on that, Brian? Okay, so we have the motion. You made the motion, John?
No, I was just questioning.
Okay. Okay, Doug, you make the motion then? Okay, sorry.
Sherry.
Yeah. All in favor of what we just done? Sorry.
The original mover and seconder of the motion to approve that.
Okay, Sherry, so if you want to amend your motion to go to Doug's conversation or?
So can I ask a question about that?
Sure, go ahead.
Is there not, and maybe you already referred to this, but is there not some type of rule where for our insurance to cover events, they have to pay some type of rent?
And that's why I left, I said we leave it static, they have to pay the 20, and then we reimburse. So they have paid.
Go ahead, Brad.
Your Worship, so annually they have approximately 2 meetings per month. Based on the proposed guidelines, it'd be approximately $45 per meeting, to an amount of $540. Earlier this month, we had communicated with the Lions clubs, both in the South and North, Chamber and Newburgh, and indicated that it would be preferred that on an annual basis that we provided them a $500 donation rather than receiving individual event donations, because it's very difficult to budget based on the event. So we had proposed that we would provide donations in the equivalent of $500 to each event. Our preference is, from a staff perspective, in relation to Councillor Milligan's comment, is we carry a separate fuel insurance policy that requires a rental fee in exchange for additional $2 million liability coverage for anybody that rents that facility. In order for that to apply, a rental fee must be paid. So our recommendation to council, if they wish to go in that direction, is to actually provide a $1,000 donation to each Tamworth and Newburgh each year, but they still pay for the rental. So we're essentially increasing their annual donation to the equivalent of what their rental costs would be, but any additional events over and above that $500, then they would essentially pay for those rentals. That's what we had in mind in order to compromise between what the request was from the committee and what was drafted in place during COVID.
Right, Sherry?
So could you add that to my motion?
You could amend the motion.
Yes.
Make your motion.
The $1,000.
You okay with second? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Treasurer's report, Christina Bouchard.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is the accounts payable for the month of October. I don't have any items that need to highlight.
Any questions for Christina? If not, can I have a motion to do the accounts payable? Kevin, Debbie, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the manager of public works, Thompson. An update on our landfill operating position.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I get into the report, I want to clarify some questions that happened at last council meeting in my absence about landfill employees rotating different sites. So yes, the landfill employees are not dedicated to one site. I move them around and they know that. So that was just a clarification to a question. Any questions on that? Good.
You go ahead.
Report, looking for 3 employees at the police sites.
The interviews were completed last week in my absence. I haven't contacted the successful candidates yet. I will bring that to the next council meeting, but with the timeframes, we need to get the interviews completed as quick as we could.
Any questions for Jeff on this? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just Jeff, is there 3 being hired? Is that
Right now, we've got up to 3, so we need 2 for sure, and possibly 3.
Thank you. Can you explain the reason why you have the 3rd?
I'll bring a report with the number of employees at next meeting.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, so it'll be we'll formally approve the hiring next meeting.
That's right, but
We're just asking for permission on this.
just on the 3 positions, and then we can get them in, get them trained, and get them started before next council meeting.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Your worship, what the public work manager is seeking this evening is essentially delegated authority from council to hire the individuals and for that decision to be ratified at the next council meeting. By that point, those individuals will already be employed at the municipality, will just be accepting names. But we have the authority to go ahead and process that from now before the next council meeting. And that's largely because it's a month before our next council meeting, and there are some, just returning off vacation, there are some reference checks and some issues that staff and management want to get caught up on before they select those candidates.
Go ahead, John.
So I'm still a little bit in the dark. We have 2 people retiring. We may hire 2, but we might hire 3. So basically, we're giving approval to hire 3 if necessary. Is that what you're looking for here? But what's the reason that we might need a 3rd rather than just replacing the 2 that have retired?
Your worship, if I may get that, recently council passed a vaccine mandate that staff are predicting that we may have additional vacancies or requirement for depth as a result of that policy. So immediately we have 2. We are forecasting that we may have another. If we don't, that's great. We will have some depth in case we are having some difficulties with staffing in the landfills in general, especially around the holiday season. So we're looking for depth, at least with the possibility of having succession planning in the event that we need that 3rd person.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, depending on the wording here, I think I need to check conflicts of interest. A member of my family applied, I just recently found out. So just in case, I think I need to check conflict, even though it's not coming until next week.
Sounds good. So we have the update of the landfill operating position and then the waste management. So I'm looking for do the motion. Go ahead, Sherry.
I'd just like to make a motion to move forward with it.
Move forward and second it. John, any questions, comments? Okay, vote. Okay, we're gonna go to, before we go to committee board report, let's have one in the what's that, right?
We did that.
Oh, okay, that was, okay.
That was the same letter we were referring to.
Okay, good. Okay, Mr. Richmond, what's you're on the, for the 17-1 motion? 17-1. So I don't get that emergency management. Oh, okay, I was just gonna go to, I just, okay, I got that part. Sorry about that, go ahead, you said 17, I thought, no, 17 on mine.
Yeah, I got that's 11.
Okay, go ahead, sorry about that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm here just as an information matter. So on Wednesday, November 24th, so next Wednesday, we will be holding our annual emergency management review and training exercise, as well as our annual, our exercise that we must do. So that's required under the Emergency Management Act. So we'll start our day at 10 o'clock. And we'll have a meeting with our emergency control group where we'll review our hazard identification risk assessment and review our list of critical infrastructure. Then starting at 1 o'clock, we'll do our emergency exercise. So actually this year, we're just going to do a tabletop exercise of a vaccine clinic. Through the act, we're not allowed to do a debrief, so to speak, but we're going to take the time to run through an exercise of doing a vaccine clinic using the players that we had through our vaccine clinics, just to actually debrief and see where we have areas of improvement that we need to do one in the future. So I've reached out to both medical clinics and our staff here to get any feedback and invite them to come as well. So we're hoping to do that. That's about it. As part of that, I'll be sending out a meeting request, an agenda to yourself, Reeve Smith, as well as the alternate, Councillor Richmond, if they'd like to attend as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for James here? If there's not, can I have a motion to read this report?
Moved by Kevin, second by Debbie, all in favor of the motion, motion carries. Thanks a lot.
Any new business or statements from members? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just wondering if Christina maybe could answer this. If on the council website where it has the councillors and such, could you add their phone numbers in there?
I actually don't have that, but I will make a note and.
That would be great. It has our emails, but I would really like to see phone numbers. My phone number in there anyway. I don't know about anybody else, but I would sure like to see mine on there.
No problem.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
Your worship, that's a preferred option for us, Councillor Richmond. If any member of council wants us to post their phone number on the website, if they could just quickly send us an email so that we just throw that in so that there's no disclosure of personal information. So that's the only reason we don't do that, Councillor Richmond. Yours is fine, it's gonna be on the record here, but for any other council member that wishes, if they could just do that so that we have notification. Some people in the past have not wanted it there. Some people on current council may not want it there, prefer to do it by email, but if council members could just send us that would be great.
Okay, no. Anybody else have anything? All right, go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. The COP26 climate conference is just wrapped up in Glasgow. It wasn't very satisfactory, but small steps have been made. The lead item on the CBC News today has been the endless rainstorms in BC. This afternoon, the town or city, small city, I guess, of 7,000 of Merritt, BC, was completely evacuated because the floods have inundated the sewage treatment and water treatment plant. Now, we're very fortunate where we live to not have suffered extreme climate emergencies like that. We've had some severe droughts. We have reference to climate change in our official plan, but I'm wondering if it might not be time to have a more proactive approach to this issue, doing what we can, acknowledging that our budget is small and our population is small, to frame all our policies and purchases in terms of emissions impact. We've taken some initiatives that are good. The purchase of the 2 electric vehicles for the building department is a step in the right direction. I know that we don't have options for Jeff's department in terms of large equipment yet in that regard. We have heating systems that run on fossil fuels. When they reach their end of life, I think it would be a good idea to at least investigate the possibility of installing equipment such as ground source or air source heat pumps that are very low emissions. Ontario is in a fortunate position in that over 90% of our electricity generation does not emit greenhouse gases. Now, on the downside, 60% of that comes from nuclear plants, which have hazardous waste and are incredibly expensive to refurbish. However, electricity at the moment in Ontario is still a very low emission option. So I haven't gone through the official plan to look at all the references to climate change and to emissions, minimizing emissions. I think it would be an interesting exercise for us to review that and see if we can strengthen those references. But it's just been hitting home to me so much because of the COP26 climate conference and then the immediate weather emergency that we're seeing in BC and the fires we've had. We all know the sorts of disasters. And I see Jake has come forward, and I'm wondering if he has any comments on my rambling observations.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, just thank you, Your Worship. Kind of been sitting and doing a lot of thinking about this as well. One of the things I keep thinking of is I've spent the last 5 years generally replacing oil with propane, and most of the heating systems, if not all of them, in the municipality are new. And I mean, you're probably going to get 15 years, you think, out of those appliances. So change in terms of getting away from fossil fuels is going to come slowly. Maybe we end up replacing them before their lifespan. It's one of those things where it's a hard thing to figure. One of the things that we could do, I was just thinking about this recently, was obviously next year, hopefully, we're doing that medical center addition. That would be a chance where we basically make the addition fossil freeless. And use one avenue or another to heat that new addition, which isn't that big, which will have an independent heating system with something that is non-fossil fuel related. It'll cost a few more dollars, but realistically, 5 or 10 years from now, with carbon prices going up and with just energy prices overall going up, maybe the price of hydro 10 years from now is the same as the price, would be similarly, to heating with propane. Anyways, that's just my thoughts.
Well, I think that's a perfect example of an opportunity, and I would like to see an investigation of a ground, or possibly you're right by the river there, maybe a ground source heat pump taps into that groundwater. It might be a very efficient system to operate, certainly at current rates. I'm not going to make a motion in the other business section, but I would like to see us start to consider, in certainly any new installation, using non-fossil fuel sources for heating.
Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that river runs quite dry, or is dry, many months in the year, so I don't know if that's going to work at that location. It would certainly work at other river locations. And a lot of our properties are quite small. And so, unfortunately, when you look at something like the Newburgh Hall, you're probably not going to be able to do ground source heat because there just isn't the area for the wells. I think what you may find that we have to do as time goes on, if you were, as time goes on, and there could come a day when the ministry is going to make us, phase out all our fossil fuel use. We may end up doing a small panel array or Tesla roof or something like that in the future, and then using that energy from solar to basically subsidize your consumption of hydro for heating and doing everything else in the building.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, just a little update. We have in-ground heating in this building. I believe it's 11 wells, but it may be even more than that out here along the side of the building that were installed. And I know I've questioned a number of times how efficient we are. I was hopeful that with the size of the job that we did when we put the hydronic heating system in here with the holes in the ground out there, that it would heat this building, forgetting in fact that this is an old building, okay? And it's very difficult to heat these old buildings with passive systems. I've asked a number of times, and I think it's just very difficult to get an understanding of the cost, or actually how much of the heating percentage-wise is done with our passive system, because we also have a furnace down here that, no, is it all, I was under the impression, okay, it's all done with the solar system here on this building. Okay, I was told there was heaters in the plenum or something down there that were kicking in. And over at the Township Barns, I think there was 5 wells, which was never enough to even think of it. I think it was a waste of time and money over there, but that was simply a poor lack of design, okay, on the part of the engineers. I agree with you. I think it's time to start looking at what we can do. I'm not saying we can do a whole bunch of things tomorrow, but I agree it's time to start looking.
Good comment, Jake, on the furnace there for people sitting around the table.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the breakdown of everything we do, this building actually, and the offices are really affordable with that, geothermic heat loop system that we have. And you're right. I can't tell you, if there is, my knowledge of these systems, there was all long before I was here, is that there probably is something that if they need a little extra heat, there's a radiator that kicks on within the geothermal unit. But when you look at the breakdown of all our buildings, Doug, this building is way down on the list of amount of costs per year to run. So, you know, that was a smart investment made by the council of the day.
That's great, because it's the same guy installed my heat pump. And that's why I know that I think it's 15 wells up there, dry wells along the roadway there. But I do believe if you check the furnace, it's got electric heating backup banks in it. So, and I don't know how you tell how much your heat is from the electric banks and how much, but they are the only systems that will work. Air source will not work. I have air source, and it's way more expensive today. It wasn't when it was put in, but today at the price of hydro in the daytime, it's way expensive. You know, hydro in the evening is efficient. But if you use hydraulic, it'll work, especially if you can get water. But even though that, you have to drill wells. And in Tamworth, you could probably drill wells and get water because of the river, even though it runs shallow in the summertime, the groundwater would still be there, would keep the wells full.
Any other new business? I've got a letter given to me. I'm just going to read it here. It says, Stone Mills Township Santa Claus Parade. As you may be aware, we have been planning a parade in Newburgh, December 5th at 1:30. The plan is to start at the public school, go north on East Street to North Street, turn west on Main Street, turn south to County Road 1, trying to keep us all straight here, and go east to Earl Street, back to County Road 27 Main Street, to Factory Street, George Street to Conservation Area, Fire Hall, Hollow Square for hot chocolate and apple cider. We would appreciate any monetary support you may give us. Merv and Deborah Wales and Debbie Thompson. I just handed this here, so. Anyway, I know at that day there, I can't be there on that Sunday afternoon, I know, so. Brad, you wanna say anything on there, about monetary funds and groups or whatever?
Yeah, Your Worship, I spoke earlier today with Reeve Smith, just with regards to some concerns that I have with regards to the hosting of this event. So included in that letter, it's not necessarily operated by a group of, or at least it's not identified in the letter who the group is that's hosting the event. So from the perspective of management, I certainly have a concern with regards to liability as to, is there a group running this, or is that liability left on individuals? And if it's on individuals, I have some considerable concerns with that as regards to strains it could put on the municipality if something were to occur. Also, as far as that, there's also been requests for municipal one contribution, which has been somewhat uncustomary in the past, that we would provide contributions to individuals running something. Again, normally we do those to organizations or to associations inside the community. So From our perspective, we would like to get some clarification as to who's doing this event, not necessarily with council or any sort of approvals obtained to host that. And because it is, going to require street closures, et cetera, normally we have to communicate with the county, et cetera, to get approvals from them as well in advance of events like this. So we just would like to get some more details as to what this event is and who's running it and who's involved, so that council's aware of that, and then if they approve it or at least give authorization to it, then it's on record that the municipality is behind the event as well.
I guess with that being said, Debbie, your name's signed on the bottom there. Maybe you can fill us in this group or really what's put on it.
There's actually 9 people, they're mainly from Newburgh. 5 of them came and said, would you be interested in helping us organize Santa Claus Parade, Stone Mills? And I said, well, where is it? And they said, well, we want to have Newburgh. And since then, there's been 4 more members that are quite avid and supporting members of the committee. And we've got about 30 votes as it stands now, and that's mainly people that have come to us that have asked to be in the parade.
I guess just asking the question, when you say the committee, this is a group of people that want to put this on.
It's just a group of
Okay.
community people. Yeah, we asked for support from the Lions Club, but the Newburgh Tandem one, but they have shown no interest, so.
Okay, any questions or comments, or what's council think of this here?
Have we contributed anything to the camera Christmas parade in the past? Do you know, Christina, can you recall?
Not financially. I know we have donated candy canes, but that's all I'm aware
Yeah, I think even those candy canes were to our council for the event.
Yes,
They were distributed through council, so. Typically, Deputy Reblaz, earlier you heard me speak with regards to events that are hosted by Lions and Lioness Group. So breakfast with Santa, breakfast with Easter Bunny, Beaver Lake Park, Santa Claus visits. Those are the types of things that I was referring to earlier with a number of events. And so it was just easier to look at a non-for-profit donation to those events or the association rather than each individual event, because it becomes very difficult to budget for those one-offs, especially this late in the year.
Okay, anybody else got comments on this? Go ahead, Deb.
All the donations and contributions are going to the homeless and Morning Star mission. We have not charged for any entry at all because it is the first year. And people have asked, can we donate? So we're just having a donation bucket there and gathering food along the route, filling Santa's sleigh, and going from there.
So I guess what I could read out of this is if we make a donation, it would likely go into one of those other centers. If the township helped out at all, if say the township financially helped out, it would be going to one of those other centers.
It will help cover the cost of the parade, is what it's mainly like, we're hoping to bring the live reindeer in, which will be a huge attraction. And the pictures of Santa, getting Santa's float together. Just a lot of base things that have to be accomplished, I guess, in this year.
Okay, anybody? Go ahead, Sherry. I think you want to say something.
I do, but I'm not sure what. I guess I was, I'm all for a Santa parade. I think that's great. And I don't know why I assumed it was like the Lions from Newburgh or something. But so how does it work? So especially if we give a donation, which tells me that we're in favor of it, what if something happens? Falls off a float or something, and like, is this a sanction, like, if something happened? I guess,
Go ahead, Brian.
So as we spoke earlier, the municipality carries a separate insurance policy for our service groups in our municipality. So we have, TCDC, the Canada Day, like the established groups that have ran their events through our council have been given endorsement by a separate policy to cover them under insurance. And that was the basis of my concern earlier, that if it is a group of individuals, I really suggest that from a confirmation and a support perspective, that this group be created as a Santa Claus Day. I mean, it's very late now, it's very difficult to do that, but created as though it's a committee and then seek council endorsement for that same coverage as other service groups would get. Please don't take this as though it's against any individual. It's just strictly in my world, risk management and being concerned if something does go happen, then somebody that was simply trying to help run a community event could be at the subject of some sort of, accident claim or otherwise. So that's really all my concern is if council wishes to establish the group of individuals as the Santa Claus Parade in Newburgh and provide, coverage under our policy, or we endorse them as a community group, then we can do so. But I really think that we need to be doing that and being willing to commit that it's essentially a municipally endorsed event, and in the absence of a liability policy, the municipality is accepting responsibility for such. That's really the only way that I believe that our council should be supporting this event, as without a policy on the organizers, the person with the deepest pockets are the ones that's going to be claimed. And it's not different than, say Township or Napanee, when they host the event, they're accepting liability. But in this case, I just want it to be very clear in advance of the event, who's really endorsing this. Is the group working on behalf of the municipality and doing something that we would have normally did, or is it council's desire to have them at arm's length and give them approval, but that they want an insurance policy or something of that nature before they grant approval? It's totally council's discretion, but those are exactly my concerns for the protection of the individuals that may be volunteering to try to host this event.
I guess if that being said, I have to agree with Brian on this. Maybe let it go on this year without our involvement, and then next year we get their list in the same as everybody else in the summer, like for different organizations. We'll have some Township 5,000. Anybody, we gotta make a decision here, council, or anybody want to give their thoughts on it? Go ahead, John.
Well, I think you just said it. It's just a bit too late in the day. Maybe if the group wants to rein themselves in a little bit and maybe not go for expenses. I mean, people are entering floats. They're going to pay for their own floats. The township's contribution, in effect, is going to be to get the police to close off some streets, or whatever has to happen when you have a parade. I would suggest the group be conservative in what money you spend. If the event is a success and popular, organize earlier. Come to the township at budget time later this winter, and get something in place for next year.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead, Brad.
If we can move, and I'm looking at the two gentlemen at the back of the room, and I'm sorry to center you out, both James and Jeff. There is already somewhat a community expectation that this event is taking place inside the community, correct? I believe there's already some legwork that's been done. I don't want to see council or any of our management be the reason that this doesn't occur. We've seen that in other municipalities, and during COVID, I really think that it's something that we need to, hopefully find a gap or allow this to operate. The financial contribution is a concern with budget. We don't have a lot of donation funds left. That's one aspect of it. But is there some sort of manner to which council will endorse this event with the individuals? If there's collaboration with, like our fire department, I know are participating in the plan. They're definitely not running it. But would council be amenable if the parade committee communicates with management so that they're comfortable with traffic control plans and et cetera. And as I'm looking at Jeff, I'm not putting this on him, but I know he's partaking in the event as far as establishing some vehicles participating. Is there appetite from council to essentially co-host this for 1 year to get this group established so that we can essentially try to formalize them for future years? Because without the presence of the policy, we're the deepest pockets and are likely to be the individuals claimed anyways. And so I just don't want to be the person that comes late to the table and says, wait a second, we're trying to protect you. You can't have it. Is there an appetite from council to be part of that co-host in consultation with management, so that we can help them make sure that their I's are dotted and T's are crossed, to put off a first event just to get them through.
So would this be like come under a special events policy then?
Well, what we have, Deputy Reeve Wise, and it predates me, and I encourage any of you to jump in. We have a separate policy that covers community groups. So that policy is there that in the event that any of our local associations that do work, TCDC, the Friends of the Salmon River, if they're doing work for us, but they're not us, then we can essentially adopt them as community associations working on municipal ventures at arm's length. And so they communicate. That's the reason we get the TCDC's minute schedules, their event schedules, et cetera. So if something happens there and they should be policy, that policy is covered under that separate policy. So the Canada Day Committee, things of that nature, the community groups that operate on behalf of the community, which I believe fit this description, as say a Santa Claus parade, because if they didn't run it and we insisted we have one, we would essentially be in that business. And so this is the type of policy and group that would fit, but in this case, we just don't have approval and we don't have another meeting to approve them as an event before to say we're doing something more than just providing them insurance. So regardless of whether we pass it this evening just for the sake of insurance, we might as well just co-host, because we're left with, with some exposure to help host that, in the sense that our firefighters are participating, it'll be county road closures, et cetera, or at least rolling closures, and it's a community event. So there is a certain amount of assumption of risk, which I think is expected, but I would just like to get that formalized this evening so that everybody has clear expectations or not, before it goes ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
So Brian, am I hearing you right saying that and I recognize this policy that you're talking about, are you suggesting that we go so that it removes the liability, strictly the liability?
That is the 100% perspective.
And I could agree with that. I could agree with that. I'll guarantee you the fire trucks are gonna be in the parade without even looking over that way. I've never seen a parade yet in this community didn't have fire trucks not in it. I mean, and it doesn't cost us any more money, to be honest with you, to cover the insurance. It's a blanket policy. So, I mean, I can agree with that, and tell the group to get organized and put in a request for next year for funds. I would support that.
I'll second it.
And I don't have no problem with that. I was just concerned about the liability more than anything. I mean, it falls off the wagon. And okay, so you made the motion, you seconded that. All in favor of that motion? Motion's carried. With that being said, we're going to go to the permit bylaw. Made by Sherry. Kevin, all in favor of the motion? Okay, motion adjourned. John, Debbie. Good night, everybody. We have meetings in
Council members, just a courtesy, the next council meeting is December 13th.